everyone, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rachel. I'm an archaeologist, and like many other archaeologists, one of the things that inspired me towards this career as a child were the Indiana Jones films. Dr. Jones is undoubtedly one of, if not the, most recognizable representation of archaeology in pop culture. And today, I am digging deep into the latest and last entry in the series, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Spoiler warning, if you haven't seen the film yet, I will be going into detail on key plot points from the film. I've already covered all the previous films. If you haven't seen them yet, they are linked here. This video will cover the archaeological methods, sites, and artifacts portrayed in Dial of Destiny. What is the Antikythera? How was it used in antiquity? Did Archimedes discover time travel? Do I appear as an extra on one of the scenes filmed in Scotland? I'll be answering those questions and more, as well as giving you my genuine review of what I thought of the film. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're interested in learning about real-life archaeology and its discoveries. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up to tell the YouTube algorithm to promote it. I spend the equivalent of a work day writing, filming, and editing each of these videos. I even went so far as to buy a good quality hat and jacket, so you taking a few seconds to subscribe or like is very much appreciated, as it helps support me keeping the channel going. Okay guys, let's dig in. The film begins with a sequence near the end of World War II, presumably in 1945. The castle featured here is Bamborough Castle, which is located on the northeastern coast of England. Indy is captured spying on the Nazis in Germany, where they are searching for / packing up relics to ship to Berlin. If you've watched my previous videos in this series, you will know already that this scene is based in historical fact. Nazis did steal art and other items of religious and cultural importance. Here, they were originally seeking the Holy Lance, aka the Lance of Longinus, aka the Spear of Destiny. This is the lance that is alleged to have pierced the sides of Jesus as he was hung on the cross during his crucifixion, and it is a religious relic in real life. It is mentioned in the Gospel of John, but the name of the soldier Longinus, who pierced Christ's side, is not referenced until around the 4th century CE. At least 4 major relics currently claim to be the Holy Lance or parts of it. The one in the film is clearly based on the Holy Lance from the Imperial Treasury at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria. It is a typical winged lance of the Carolingian dynasty from the early Middle Ages. In real life, when Austria was annexed to Germany, the Nazis brought the imperial regalia, including the lance, to Nuremberg, where they were transferred into a bunker that had been built into some medieval cellars underneath Nuremberg Castle. Most of the regalia were recovered by the Allies at the end of the war, but the Nazis had hidden the most important pieces, including the lance. The Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives program, also known as the Monuments Men, was tasked with tracking down the missing pieces. After a series of interrogations and false rumors, a city councillor confessed, and they were found behind a wall of masonry in a small room off of a subterranean corridor roughly 80 feet below the ground. The film includes a classic scene of Indy teaching a class, although they no longer seem to be fawning over him as they used to, and instead are very bored. He briefly discusses Assyrian ceramics, but it doesn't give enough info in the film that I could thoroughly research to see if what he is saying about these ceramics is correct, but I will say that when I think of blue and white ceramic, I think Chinese porcelain, not Assyrian ware. This class is also where we are introduced to Archimedes of Syracuse, a real person in antiquity. As Indy says, Archimedes was an ancient Greek mathematician, physicist, engineer, astronomer, and inventor who lived in the 3rd century BCE. You have probably heard of him via the story of his discovery of Archimedes' principle, a method for determining the volume of an object with an irregular shape. According to Vitruvius, a crown had been made for a king of Syracuse who supplied pure gold to be used in its making. Archimedes was asked to determine if silver had been substituted by the goldsmith without damaging the crown itself. While taking a bath, he noticed that the level of the water in the tub rose as he got in, and realized that this effect could be used to determine the crown's volume. Excited by his discovery, he then took to the streets naked, crying, "Eureka!" which is Greek for, "I have found it." There is a small Easter egg / nod to this story near the end of the film. Notably, this story does not appear anywhere in Archimedes' known works. A biography of his life was written, but has been lost, leaving the details of his life obscure. It is unknown whether he ever married, had children, or if he ever visited Alexandria in Egypt during his youth, as has been claimed, and which is referred to in the film. The standard versions of his life were written long after his death by Greek and Roman historians. Indy also makes mention here of machines Archimedes designed to use against Roman invaders during the siege of Syracuse. It is true that during the historical siege, the city was protected by weapons developed by Archimedes. He is said to have designed a claw known as the ship shaker, which consisted of a crane-like arm which a large metal grappling hook was suspended from. When the claw was dropped onto an attacking ship, the arm would swing upwards, lifting the ship out of the water and possibly sinking it. There have been modern experiments to test its feasibility, which have concluded that it was a workable device. The other machine is often referred to as the Archimedes heat ray. It was a purported mirror arrangement which focused sunlight on approaching ships, presumably causing them to catch fire. This invention has been the subject of ongoing debate about its credibility since the Renaissance. Modern researchers have attempted to recreate the effect, but the results have been mostly negative. Instead, it has been suggested that a large array of highly polished bronze or copper shields, acting as mirrors, could have been employed to focus sunlight onto a ship, but the overall effect would have been blinding, dazzling, or distracting to the crew, rather than lighting the ship on fire. There is one last fact relevant to Archimedes that the film gets wrong, but I'm going to save it until we're speaking about his tomb. Indy's class is attended by his goddaughter, Helena Shaw, and eventually they end up in a very realistic-looking archaeology storeroom at the university where Indy shows her half of the Antikythera, aka Archimedes' dial, which he stole from the Nazis at the beginning on the plunder train and later took away from her father. The Antikythera used in the film has little to no resemblance to the real-life artifact besides its name and site of discovery. In 1900, a crew of sponge divers discovered the wreck of a ship 45 meters deep off the coast of the island of Antikythera. Working with the Hellenic Royal Navy, the team then spent 2 years retrieving numerous objects, including bronze and marble statues, pottery, unique glassware, jewelry, coins, and the Antikythera device. The mechanism was retrieved in 1901, and at the time of its discovery, it was encased in a corroded clump of metal. Its significance was revealed in 1902, when the clump broke apart to reveal an intricate network of gears. Since then, we have used X-rays, CT scans, and other tools to study the 82 surviving fragments of the device, which is believed to date between roughly 260 BCE. The inside was made of bronze gear wheels with a big dial on the front. It was originally thought to be a navigation device or a modern object dropped at the wreck site centuries after the ship sank. A more far-fetched theory suggested it was alien technology used on spaceships. It is the most sophisticated example we have of ancient Greek technology. There is nothing else as complex or even close to it. What we do know about it is that the ship carrying it set sail between 70 and 60 BCE. It was coming back west from the Asia Minor coast. Initially, it was thought to be a Roman vessel bringing looted treasures home. Further analysis suggests it was actually a Greek trading vessel carrying luxury goods. Cicero, a first-century Roman writer and politician, wrote descriptions of devices that sound quite similar to the Antikythera, but didn't include technological details. He attributes one of them to a philosopher named Posidonius, who lived on Rhodes at exactly the time scholars think the Antikythera ship would have stopped at the island. The prevailing theory is that the device was made in a workshop on Rhodes and was being shipped to northern Greece when the ship sank. Cicero also wrote about another device he said was constructed by Archimedes. However, Archimedes lived a couple centuries too early to have made this particular mechanism. What is clear about the device's purpose is that it wasn't used to do work. Instead of telling you the time, it showed you the motions of the sun, moon, and the planets in the sky. There is nothing that it could do that you couldn't accomplish much more easily with other navigational instruments from that time. Some of the inscriptions on it are almost like the kind of captions you'd expect to see at a museum, explaining it to you what is happening as the machine is working. Thus, the explanation for its purpose that most scholars have converged on is that it was a philosophical or teaching device, summarizing knowledge of the universe and how it works, and it was a way of sharing that knowledge with other people. Divers have been going back down to the Antikythera shipwreck since around 2012. One of the things they would love to find there is either more pieces of the mechanism or other devices like it. You can see the real Antikythera at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. The film progresses into a chase scene set in New York during a Moon Day parade, which I have a personal anecdote about. This sequence was filmed in Glasgow, Scotland. I live in Edinburgh, Scotland, a very short train ride away. In 2021, when the film was shooting, I saw an ad in the local news that a big but unnamed Hollywood production was looking for extras for about a week of filming in Glasgow. Indy 5 had already been spotted filming in other locations in Scotland, so I connected the dots and applied. A few weeks later, I found that I had been accepted and went around to basically everyone that I know pretty well personally that I was going to be an extra in Indiana Jones 5. It's hard to overstate how excited I was. It wasn't until I showed up for the costume fitting that I was told that the production was not filming Indiana Jones, but instead a DC superhero movie that also came out earlier this summer. It was filming literally the week after Indy 5 wrapped. To say I was a bit devastated and embarrassed is an understatement. I did manage to go to the Indiana Jones set while it was up to get some photos and videos of it before it was all taken down. And then I spent a week filming as an extra on this other film, which was a really fun and cool experience, despite the fact that it wasn't what I originally thought I was going to be doing. Getting back to the film, Indy tracks Helena down in Morocco, and together they go after the Graphicos, which they surmise is on the other half of the shipwreck in the Aegean. As far as I could find, the real shipwreck is not in two distinct pieces as shown here. It was first described as a heap of rotting corpses and horses on the seabed. However, it was quickly established that they were in fact bronze and marble statues. There were not 100 Roman soldiers on it guarding something. The remains of roughly 5 individuals have been recovered and publicized from the wreck at present. Human bone fragments from 4 adults, one of whom was possibly female, were discovered between 1900 and 1976, but are poorly preserved and incomplete. In 2016, underwater archaeologists recovered the bones of a young man they called Pamphilos. They think he was trapped in the ship when it went down and was buried very rapidly, or his bones would have disintegrated. Unlike the earlier specimens, his bones are much better preserved, which might allow for DNA analysis. From 2021 to 2025, a new project is collating the data from all previous excavations to build a complete 3D map of the shipwreck for virtual access, enabling members of the public all over the world to explore it via the internet. It's also worth noting that the discovery of this shipwreck helped lead to the creation of the discipline of underwater archaeology. The Graphicos is an entirely fictional object, but the languages mentioned in relation to it are real. Linear B is a syllabic script, not code, that was used for writing in Mycenaean Greek. It predates the Greek alphabet by several centuries, and its application appears to have been confined to administrative contexts. Its oldest writing dates to around 1400 BCE, and it disappeared with the fall of the Mycenaean civilization during the late Bronze Age collapse, long before Archimedes lived. Linear B was deciphered in 1952, and it is the only Bronze Age Aegean script to have been deciphered. The other script mentioned here is Polybius, which is a code. The Polybius square is used for fractionating plain text characters so that they can be represented by a smaller set of symbols, which is used for telegraphy, steganography, and cryptography. It was not originally intended as a cipher, but rather as an aid to transmitting long-distance messages via fire signaling. By using 5 different colored flags, you could signal a message across a long distance. It is much like Morse code, but much simpler to learn. Also mentioned here is the Great Library of Alexandria, where Archimedes allegedly studied. This was one of the largest and most significant libraries of the ancient world and was part of a larger research institution called the Museum, which was dedicated to the Muses, the 9 goddesses of the arts, as the film suggests. Despite the widespread modern belief that it was burned and cataclysmically destroyed, the library actually declined gradually over time, and its membership appears to have ceased by the 260s CE. There is only one single description by the Greek historian Strabo, which describes a public walk, a place furnished with seats, and a large hall in which the men of learning take their common meal. Whatever remains of it today is buried deep under modern Alexandria. We don't know where it was located, and not a single stone of the library building or its papyrus rolls has been found. The reference to the statues of the Muses holding up the ceiling are most likely an allusion to the caryatids, sculpted female figures that serve as an architectural support taking the place of a column. The most famous example of a caryatid in present day can be seen at the Erechtheion Temple on the Athenian Acropolis, next to the Parthenon. Our heroes then travel to Syracuse in search of Archimedes' tomb inside Dionysus' ear. There is a scene where they arrive at an archaeological park with an abandoned temple in the background. This was filmed on the western part of Sicily at Segesta Temple, an unusually well-preserved Doric temple. It is comprised of 6 by 14 columns on a base measuring 21 by 56 meters. Several elements suggest that it was never finished, and unlike what is shown in the film, you cannot walk from the temple down to the Ear of Dionysus cave, as they are on opposite sides of Sicily. The Ear of Dionysus is located in the archaeological park of Syracuse. It is a limestone cave carved out of a hill, and its name comes from the painter Caravaggio, due to its similarity in shape to the human ear and its acoustic effects. According to legend, the tyrant Dionysus of Syracuse used the cave as a prison for political dissidents, and by means of the perfect acoustics, eavesdropped on their plans and secrets. In reality, it is thought it was most likely formed out of an old limestone quarry that was repurposed for water storage for the city. It is here that the film places the tomb of Archimedes, which is very different to where it probably is in real life. In Syracuse, the archaeological park of the Neapolis hosts the most important ruins of the old Greco-Roman city. In the northeastern corner of the park, there is a long street strewn with Greek, Roman, and Byzantine graves carved into the limestone cliffs. Among them is the famous Tomb of Archimedes, recognized by its gabled facade. According to legend, the famous mathematician is buried here, but this is not true. It is actually a Roman columbarium from the 1st century CE. Roman historian Plutarch wrote that Archimedes is said to have asked to have a cylinder enclosing a sphere placed over his grave, with an inscription giving the proportion by which the containing solid exceeds the contained. There is no mention of Athena, who was the Greek goddess of war, wisdom, and handicraft. However, reference to her here is accurate, as Syracuse, like Athens, worshipped Athena. 137 years after Archimedes' death in 75 BCE, Cicero asked the Syracusans where Archimedes' tomb was. They replied that they knew nothing about it and doubted that it had existed. Cicero was unconvinced and began his own search. Near the door of Agrigento, he noticed a small column in the undergrowth. After slightly cleaning the area, the sphere and cylinder appeared before him. It is possible that the tomb remained intact for many years after this, but eventually it fell back into oblivion, and instead the Roman columbarium took its place. As the film reaches its climax, Indy is transported back in time to 212 BCE during the Roman siege of Syracuse, a real historic city and conflict on the island of Sicily. Syracuse played a key role in antiquity, where it was a major Mediterranean power. It equaled Athens in size during the 5th century BCE. The siege of Syracuse by the Roman Republic took place in 213 to 212 BCE, as shown in the film. During this, the city was fiercely defended for many months against the Romans. However, eventually the Romans prevailed and successfully stormed it, giving them control of all of Sicily. This is where we have one of the biggest plot holes, for me, in the film. It is implied in these scenes that Archimedes had not yet finished the dial, and yet by the time he dies and is buried, where Indy and Helena find him, it is finished. The plot hole here is that Archimedes actually died at the end of the siege of Syracuse. Despite the orders of the Roman general Marcellus to capture him alive, he was killed by a common soldier during the looting of the city. While the film doesn't pinpoint at what point in the siege the scene takes place, I find it really difficult to believe that he would have had enough time to complete his project before he died. I can't comment directly on the historical accuracy of the costumes and sets from this scene, but broadly speaking, it looked right to me. Although I will say that Archimedes is said to have died when he was 75 and not in his mid-40s or 50s, as the film shows. What I find really believable about this scene is that Indiana Jones wants to stay in this time that he studied all of his life. As an archaeologist, I also would jump at the chance to time travel back to see how people that I've studied lived. Although I probably would try to pick a time or place that wasn't currently being invaded. The film ends with Indy being forced to go back to his time to receive medical care, although he is left with the completed dial, so there's nothing to say that he couldn't travel back to other times in future. So do we see any archaeological methods being used in the film? Not really. I would include him teaching his class and deciphering the graph codes, and we sort of see some tools as they're preparing to go into the cave, but they aren't used, / they are more for exploring than excavating. Probably my favorite joke in the film is when they are climbing to the tomb and Indy talks about how he's not as spry as he used to be, a sentiment I think most archaeologists experience after a few years of kneeling, squatting, shoveling, and troweling while excavating. I would also count the dive to the shipwreck as kind of basic underwater archaeology as well. I appreciated the scene communicating with Archimedes in ancient Greek. Overall, I enjoyed the film. I would rank it solidly in the middle of the series. Raiders first, Last Crusade second, Dial of Destiny third, Temple of Doom fourth, and Crystal Skull either last or not included at all. I have very much enjoyed the inclusion of the theme of time travel. I have often said to people that archaeological interpretation cannot be taken as definitive. It is the best educated guess made of the evidence that we have found so far. And the only way to know for sure is to travel back in time. My biggest criticism of the film would be that it was too long. I thought that some of the chase sequences could have been shorter while still hitting key plot points. Okay, everyone, that's it for today and for this series, digging deep into the archaeology of Indiana Jones. What did you think of Dial of Destiny? Did you enjoy it? Where would you travel back in time if you had a choice? Let me know in the comments down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please take a few seconds to give it a thumbs up or share it so that more people can see it. Given that you guys seem to enjoy these reviews, I might turn this into something of a bit more regular series. What movie would you want me to cover next? Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye!